Next step is to make the context. So I've got my base geometry and now I want to make the context. And to do that, first I'm going to make the shade for this. And I'm going to move this up so I can see a little bit clearly. The fins are this deep. And so I can make fins by pressing on the rectangle and then just tracing over that. That's one fin, and I'm going to double click on that and press Control X. You'll see in a second why. So I'm going to cut that, and now I'm going to make a new object called a shading object. You see up here on the top there's this icon, which is a new Energy Plus shading group. I'm going to click on that and click into my my file, and then press Enter to enter that group. You see I've got everything else grayed out. If I go to Edit, Paste in Place, it will paste my geometry right where it was, but now it's inside the shading group, which is where I want it, because I want Energy Plus to understand that that geometry is a shade. If I click outside of it, you can see that well, it might be hard with this. I'm going to hide this for a second. There's two sides to this. There's a purple side and there's a gray side, or a light purple side. And by the way, in Energy Plus, the darker side is always the front face and the lighter side is always the back face. In this case, it doesn't really matter because you'll see it's going to both faces are going to shade. So now I can move this shade anywhere I want in the file, and in fact what I want to do is shade this window. So I'm going to move this edge right next to that window and align it with my floor here, so I've got it. And since this shade goes all the way up and down, it really doesn't matter to me how tall it is. Actually, if I go back to my section, I can see exactly how tall it should be. I guess it does matter a little bit. Some sun could theoretically sneak in over the top, so it's only that tall. Oh, look at that! I did a good job. So that's how tall it is. And the horizontal overhangs, you can see these ones are longer at the third floor. I guess these are shorter at this floor. I think they only align with the fin. So I'm going to make horizontal fins in the same way by using my line tool, which is the shortcut is L, and I'm going to drag out and then over by pressing Shift and aligning to here, and then back and then back, and that makes a whole group, or it makes a whole object. I'm going to double click and press Control X, and again I'm going to take my shading group, plop it down, press Enter, and then Edit, Paste in Place, and I've got a shade over that window. Actually, what I will do here, just for expedience, is to extend the entire length of the facade, like so, because I've got a shading device in each of these bays. And now I can actually copy this vertical to each of these using the same method. This is M and Control to each edge, and I'm going to use that. You see this times method, so I'm going to move to there and do 5x, and it will copy them all along. Bueno, so I've got my fins there, and now I need fins on the north side. I don't think that there's any horizontals on the north side, but I'm going to take this fin and I'm going to copy it over to the north side there, and then I'm going to rotate it by pressing Q, or this rotate, and then clicking on the bottom as a reference, and then 90 degrees, and Enter. And then I need to align this with the inside face of the window, and again like that, and I'm going to press 2x. Oh, there's something a little bit off, but I'm just going to move these. I'm going to manually move these over. There's some imprecision somewhere in my modeling. And so now I've got my shades with my vertical fins. I think there's probably one more row of shades, if I remember right, that aligns down here. And so I'm going to take this shade and copy it down to align with there. Doesn't seem right, does it? I'll take another look at this when I go into the computer lab, but I think it's probably more like that relationship. I'm going to go with that for now. So I've almost done here. I'm going to hide my geometry for a second and go to View, Hide Geometry. That's hiding all my SketchUp or my SketchUp geometry, and that I'm going to delete. So I've now got a whole series of OpenStudio geometry. I'm going to save this as 02 shading, because I've now added that .idf, and clear it and open it again. 02 shading.idf, and cross my fingers everything imports correctly. Excellent. So everything appears to be there. So now let me show you, and one of the reasons why I want you to do this in SketchUp. SketchUp comes with a very cool tool, which is Geolocation. I can locate this geometry in the world by going to Window, Model Info, Geolocation, Add Location, and then a dialog box will come up, which will search for the location in Berkeley. I was just looking at Villa Savoye, that's why that's my last one. But I'm going to just type in Worcester Hall, Berkeley, California, and there it is. So it uses Google Maps as a search engine. And I'm going to click Select Region and Grab. And what I want to grab here is the immediate context. So whatever shading is going to influence the computer lab. And I don't need to include things that are behind it, behind the building, in my case, because I'm just worried about the computer lab and nothing else here. So I'm going to extend this a little further, but make sure I include things that will impact it. I'm going to click Grab, and it will automatically import it into the model. And you can see here, it actually does it with north following the y-axis. So you can see that this is just slightly off of north. And what I like to do at this point is to make sure that I know where north is and where the y-axis is, and set up what's called a project north so that I can make a new axis. The way to do this is to set up a scene that is that axis. So I'm going to click, I'm going to unclick these check marks here, and all I want to do is keep the axis location. Press plus, and I'm going to name this True North. And then I'm going to make a new one and call it Project North. And this Project North, I'll come back to reassign it in a second. I want to align with the with the actual Worcester Hall. So I'm going to draw on here. I'm going to trace. I'm going to go up to Camera, Parallel Projection, Camera, Top View. And what I want to do is trace as best I can the line that is that face. And I want to also do what's perpendicular to it, which I can do by starting anywhere sort of in the middle, and then oh, you know what, this might be, no, why is it not snapping here? I'm going to press L for line, and then there we go. So if it should show that magenta color or pink color, and that will be perpendicular to the edge. So now I can make a new axis that looks like that. To do that, click on this axes, and starting in the middle, go over to the right and then to the top, and now I've got a new axis. And I want to update this project north, so I click on this update scene, and so if I click on true north, it switches to my true north axis, and if I click on project north, it switches to my project north axis. And what I want to do is align my SketchUp or my OpenStudio geometry with my new project north axis. So to rotate the zone to the proper axis, I can take these axes and group them. I'm going to press Shift and then right click, make group, and then move them to the corner of the zone. And then I want to select all of my Energy Plus objects and then deselect that guideline, and then move the zone, or move the Energy Plus objects by rotating. So I'm going to click there and then click my reference and then snap to that axis guideline, and now everything should line up correctly. So now I can just move my zone to align with this corner, and I've located it in space. I'm on the second floor, so I'm actually going to move it up 16 feet, and now it is located in space correctly relative to the corner. And now I need to locate the different obstructions around the site. I've got a large tree here, I've got a smaller tree over here, I've got a building over here, another building over here. I think this building is going to have little impact on that, so I'm not going to model it. There's one right here. So what I want to do is model these different obstructions. The easiest way to do this is, again, these are all shading objects. So if I use the rectangle and, whoops, wrong tool, this rectangle tool, and I can just approximate that and use push-pull to get approximately the right height. I'd say this is probably about 20 feet tall. I'd say this is about 20 feet tall. And this one I think is about a 4-story building. So I see it's also not the same alignment. So I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to put this up about 50 feet. And then this building over here, I'm going to also do, I'm actually not sure offhand, but I think this is about a 50-foot building as well. Now this building is way off in the distance. I don't think that's going to impact this at all. And now I can look at trees. So I've got one tree actually pretty well aligned there. And for trees, I'm going to use also a shading object, and the method I like to use to simplify this is just a rectangle that's the approximate diameter of the tree. So actually this one's in pretty good shape. If I press S, I can not only scale this uniformly and proportionally, I can also do it disproportionately, so I can just kind of align the diameter and get a good tree canopy there. And then I'm going to copy this over to this side and do the same thing for this. This is a much larger tree, and looks like about the right height, maybe a little taller. Oops. And now this tree may not. Well, it looks like this tree probably will impact a little bit. And then there's some other ones over here. I'm going to copy that over to there and then rotate this so that it blocks it appropriately. So that's a real basic method for getting trees and obstructions in. Now I do want to make sure that these are all in shaded geometry. And in fact, there's a lot of these faces I don't need. It just will add to the runtime. So I'm going to delete all the faces I don't need from these shading objects, including the tops, the back sides. All I really want are the front sides like that. And I'm going to delete these guys too. Maybe this one as well. So it just adds to the runtime for the run. Actually, no, I'm going to just take this whole thing out. I don't think I need it. Okay, and then I want to make sure that all this is on the a shade layer. So I'm going to again press Control X and make a shade object, then enter, and then press Edit, paste in place. I think these guys were already shade geometry. I'm going to make sure to explode them so they then turn into shades just like everything else. Yeah. And again, don't worry about whether it's the correct side or not. Finally, notice again these PVs that are floating above here. I'm just going to tuck them in next to the building, or on top of the building here. And we're going to talk about these more in a few weeks. Make sure that they don't intersect with the building geometry, but that they're above the building geometry and kind of out of the way. We'll come back to them. Please do not erase them. And actually, this is a good time. I'm going to save this again. 03 context.idf. This is a good time to point out that these are building information objects. The way to check is to go here to your info tool, and you can hover over any of these and you'll get some information. So this says it's shading, building, detailed, and it gives you all the different faces. This is building surface detailed, and it says it's a wall, it's in zone 1, and it even gives it a name. These guys, you'll notice, have names. This is PV3, this is PV2, and this is PV01. And that's the reason that it's very important you don't erase them. If you, for instance, want to know later that these are trees, you can rename them. And so actually what I want to do is save this file, and then I'm going to clear it and then open it again. And it takes a little bit longer to draw these objects, to import them. But now they're all separate objects. It separates all the different shading objects. And we can actually go and customize the name. So if I show the object info window, you can see this opens by default at type building. And I can change this to site, and then I'll know later that these are site objects and are trees. So this is the easiest way to signal to yourself for later that those are trees, in case you want to set a transparency to them for the leaves. Another thing you can see here, oh, I forgot that this name was here. You can rename, I encourage you to rename it to whatever your project is called. So I'm going to call this Worcester 214. The rotation is based on the rotation that we already applied here. The terrain, we'll explain later in the semester, but try to select the terrain that best approximates your location. This is going to affect the wind velocity at your building. And in my case, for the campus here, I would say it's closest to the suburbs. And don't change any of these other parameters. Now that's overall for your building. If you click on your zone, you'll see it listed as Zone 1. And if you click into the zone, you can click on your roof and see that it is a roof construction, exterior roof, outside boundary condition, outdoors. Now for Worcester Hall and the computer lab, this is not an outdoor condition. It's an indoor condition, and it shares a face with the floor above it. And theoretically, there's no heat transfer that's occurring between the computer lab and the room upstairs. Now, in real life, there is, because the internal loads are different. But it's close enough that, and I would encourage you all to use this type of logic, that it's essentially adiabatic. And what adiabatic means is that there's no heat transfer. And so for the boundary condition, I'm going to change this to adiabatic, and therefore no heat will flow through that. I'm going to do the same for my wall. I'm going to change that to adiabatic, the wall to the corridor, and then this wall, which shares it with the neighbor, I'm going to also make that adiabatic. And finally, my floor there, it's automatically sees it as the ground, but I'm going to make that adiabatic as well, because it actually is shares a heat with the floor below it. So effectively, the only heat transfer surfaces I have here are this facade and this facade. And this facade has the construction exterior wall. We'll have to remember that for later. And so does this, the same construction, exterior wall. It also is sun exposed and wind exposed, which is important and we'll be using. So that all looks good. I'm also going to inspect these. They all are part of the building shading group, so that's good. And these are part of the site shading group, so that's good. So everything is in order here. Looks like we're good. If you wanted to name these, you can name it here. So I could call this North, I'll call it Tree North. And I can call this Tree West 1 and Tree West 2. And I'll show you where that all goes. You can see it writes this file. What it does is it writes a text file, which we can see in separately. So two things to do here. I'm going to save this as 04 finished geometry.idf, and then I'm also going to save my SketchUp file, because my SketchUp file includes, I'm going to clear the OpenStudio information, and it includes my background image, and it includes my True North and Project North. And this way I can easily toggle between these later if I want to make any changes. So I'm going to go up to here and press Save As. I'm going to save this to my desktop for now, and I'm going to call this Worcester 214 background. And please do the same for yours. Make sure to keep those SketchUp files and OpenStudio IDF files separate. Okay, we are pretty much done with this tutorial. There's a few other things I want to go over relative to your geometry inputs for Energy Plus. So here's a few tips that will help you out as you model your own zone. There are some rules that Energy Plus has in terms of its the way that it reads the surfaces. So I want to show you some tricks. The first rule is that there cannot be L-shaped or U-shaped surfaces in Energy Plus. It doesn't know how to read them. It also can't have curved surfaces. So there's a few ways of getting around this. The first way is, say you had an L-shaped building. So I'm going to make another surface here, and I'm going to pull this out to make an L. Now, this is an illegal surface. Energy Plus doesn't know how to read this, and you're going to get errors. However, if you subdivide this by placing a line through here and, importantly, can't see this right now. Here, let me turn this off. And, importantly, a line through here, both, that is going to isolate this wing from this one. And now Energy Plus will be able to read it. Oh, I forgot. One more. You need this surface too. Oh, whoops, and they all need to align. So I did this wrong. That is bad. So you want, there we go, that to align so that it can read this as one volume and this as a separate volume. And something that's important here is to make sure that that SketchUp doesn't accidentally make a plane right through there. And the way to check this is to click on the roof and hide it for a second. And you see that there is actually a plane there. You can just go ahead and delete that, and you see that it goes all the way through. So to unhide that geometry, now I can go here and unhide, and it's back. It is always a good idea when you do things like this to especially save the file. I'm going to save as 05L shape .idf to load that file again. So load that file again and make sure that when it rereads it, it imports it correctly. So it looks like it's okay. Let's go here and hide this and see. Yep, that's good. So that's what we want to see. Another rule is that the geometry needs to be rectilinear. It can't be curved, and sometimes there are issues with triangles or geometry that is not a four-sided figure. So, for instance, a triangular window can pose some problems. A way around this is to make a rectangle and then bring the side in close to the edge of the triangle, but not quite. So you still have a four-sided figure there, and this generally is more successful. I think, and well, I guess this goes without saying, but also subdividing a window is a bad idea. So you don't want to draw the mullions like that. If you have two windows, then you want to make sure that there's a gap between it so that Energy Plus understands that this is one window and that's a different window. I didn't say this before, but you can also name these windows if you want to refer to them later. So this window could be window 1, and this one be window 2. And that's really a very good practice, is to name everything. When we're working with small zones, sometimes I don't name it, I let it auto-name it because it can be a little bit faster. Few last things, I guess. I made this floor into an adiabatic floor. Many of you will probably have floors with ground contact, and in which case you want to have the ground contact, but the ground would not be sun or wind exposed. It would only be sun or wind exposed if it's up from the ground. And for this class, we're just going to make single zone models. So this is all one zone. We're not going to go into multi-zone models, which can be much more complex. So I would like you to best approximate one zone within your building. Pick something that is representative of your building and not necessarily the entire building. But you do want to make sure that you get appropriate numbers of appropriate orientations that are best representative of your building, and as well as representative of your programmatic areas. So, for instance, if you have a kitchen and a bedroom, model that as one zone, and then we'll have to average the loads later. So two more things I almost forgot. One is if you open a file like the one we just made and you get this error, then something bad has happened. And I just saw it as I was closing it. So the file does not contain, do you want to set these before drawing geometry? No. But then it says, error fenestration surface detailed F12C47. This subsurface is missing its base surface. A new zone object has been automatically created, however it's still missing a base surface. This is bad. And you can see what happened here is this, I'm going to press OK, this surface is now its own zone, and because it was missing a subsurface, which was that right there, that surface. So if you get this, do not just continue and feign ignorance. What you should do is remake this surface. So I'm going to delete that and remake it inside this zone. It's very, very important that you do this so that you don't end up with extra zones or with windows that don't that don't have a parent surface. One more thing I wanted to point out to you, which is daylighting. And we're going to talk about this later in the semester. But inside the template zone, you can see if I zoom in here, is this little object. There we go. There. And that object, if you inspect it, no, the inspector isn't going to tell me what it is. I need to go to the object and there. If I click on it, you can see that it is daylighting controls, and it's referencing one point, and it's continuously dimming. And we're going to talk more about this later in the semester. Now I'm inside the wall. But it is vitally important that you also keep this daylighting object, or daylighting sensor, if you will, inside your zone. Do not delete it. Okay, with that, that's the end of the geometry tutorial. And in the next tutorial, we're going to look at editing the building information objects using the IDF editor.